All right, friends, today we're opening up a conversation that we've had many times behind the scenes, and we want to be really intentional about how we start this. We actively collaborate with pelvic floor therapists all the time. We refer to them, we learn from them, and we deeply respect the work that they do for pregnant and postpartum families. You are listening to the Mom to Mom podcast, hosted by Stephanie Sinclair and Nikki Zwaber, partners and lead doulas here at How to Mom.
We're moms, we're professionals, and we're here to make motherhood feel a little less heavy and far more supported.
How to Mom is a community built for real life. From pregnancy and birth to postpartum and beyond, we support families through education, connection, and care. Our team of birth and postpartum doulas work with families every day while also sharing stories on our podcast and our blog to curate trusted resources for moms in the Twin Cities and beyond.
On this podcast, we talk about the real stuff, the stories that stay with you, the questions you're already asking, and the moments that feel hard, hopeful, and everything in between.
Absolutely. You will hear honest conversations, expert insight, lived experiences, and reminders that you are not doing this alone.
This is Mom to Mom. We're so glad you're here. And now, on to today's episode. Yep, and today's episode is certainly not about opposition. It's about scope, about collaboration, and making sure families are getting guidance that's helpful in the moment of birth. So with all of that said, let's get into today's episode, Pushing Breath and Scope, Why Nuance and Collaboration Matter in Birth.
So we know that every professional involved in pregnancy and birth has a lane, and that's a good thing. Pelvic floor therapists are experts in muscle function, rehabilitation, and long-term pelvic health.
Yes, and as doulas, we specialize in labor support. We attend births for a living. That's our job.
Yep.
And we see pushing with every single client unfold in real time in all of its variety every single day.
Absolutely. And we are big believers that collaboration works best when each professional stays rooted in their scope and refers out when another perspective is needed. So one piece of advice that we hear frequently as doulas when we're meeting with our clients often is coming from the pelvic floor therapy space. And it's usually around the advice to not hold your breath while pushing.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I completely understand where that comes from. And it is really coming from that root of protecting the pelvic floor and minimizing injury. So that is a very common conversation that is happening every time we have a client that's seeing a pelvic floor therapist.
Yeah, and because pelvic floor health is more commonly talked about and understood today than even when you and I were having babies, it is understandable that clients are really wanting to avoid trauma to the pelvic floor. And a big goal is usually to not tear or to minimize.
Yes.
And so there's just a lot more knowledge around pelvic floor health. And so we do understand why that's a priority of our clients and why that advice is given. The challenge comes when the advice is given without full context, right? Like the full picture. Or it's presented as like a hard rule for all births or all pushing stages.
Right, yeah.
And I guess we can also say that maybe it's not even always pelvic floor spaces that this is coming from. We know the advantages to social media, but we also know the downside to kind of TikTok, Google, and social media. And so it could even be for some that conversation that they're hearing online of, don't hold your breath while pushing and you won't tear.
Right. Yeah.
And that stays with people when that's a goal of theirs.
Right. Yeah. And I think what we see at birth is very different than what advice is being given or what practices even sometimes are happening. And that I think is similar for any practitioner out there or any support person out there. Like what we practice may not always be the right move in the moment at birth. And so
Mhm.
I think as doulas, where our lane comes in is really, before baby moves under the pelvis, before descent happens and they're twisty turny rotating and engagement in the pelvis.
Mhm.
Many birthing people need to push with really significant intention
Mhm.
and not just, well, this is what I was told, this is what I have to do now. Like, it really has to be specific to all of these things that have to line up perfectly,
Yeah.
um, to get through each of those stages.
Yeah.
Getting baby under the pelvis looks very different than
Crowning.
crowning.
Yes. And it takes a lot of strength to rock and move your baby. And so, well before you're seeing your baby's head or even a sliver of your baby's head, there's a lot of movement happening in those pushes well before then,
Mhm,
right? And
mhm.
your baby's head is rocking, and the intention behind that is they are helping stretch your pelvic floor with that design of pushing. And it can feel like you're really concerned about that damage to the pelvic floor that we almost hold back,
Mhm,
and we
yes.
don't give that strength and intention to actually get baby underneath the pubic bone. And once baby is underneath that pubic bone, pushing can change and look different at that time. But if we are not moving baby with the pushes
Mhm.
without holding our breath, we might need to have a little bit more bearing down and a little bit more of that strength coming from almost a breathless push.
Right, right.
And I know with our clients, we talk about poop a lot.
Yeah, we
um,
really do.
we haven't necessarily talked about it as much here on our podcast, but I always tell my clients, I'm sure everyone has experienced constipation at some point, probably more so if you're pregnant.
Right.
If you haven't before pregnancy, you've probably experienced now since pregnant. Um, and when we are backed up or constipated, and that bowel movement is now a lot harder. It's not as soft as like our daily bowel
Mhm.
movements. There are moments of trying to pass that where we have to bear down in order to move that bowel out of the way,
Mhm.
so that the regular flow can follow suit. And so I just want you guys to think about that. Like, have you ever gone to the bathroom constipated and been able to push a really hard bowel movement out without bearing down and holding your breath? Most likely not.
I don't think it's anything people are cognitively aware of,
Yeah.
right? Like, not,
Thinking about it. Yeah.
but like, yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. That's
Yeah.
that's really the best example that we can give
Yeah.
when we talk about that stage of pushing and where that energy needs to come from.
And we can shift and change gears when baby's head is getting a lot closer to like the perineum and the tissues in your vagina. But I want you to know that if you are pushing and not holding your breath, and it's taking or even if you are holding your breath and it's taking baby a while to get underneath that pubic bone, you're not doing anything wrong. It takes time, it takes strength, it takes effort. It often just means that the body is doing exactly what it needs to do to move your baby in a position where we can then start that gentler pushing.
Yes.
And so there's a distinction I think that needs to be made when this advice is given.
Yep, I
Is where
agree.
we're at.
Agreed. Mhm.
I guess that leads us to like just making sure we want to be really clear. We are not advocating for this prolonged coached pushing across the board
No.
always.
No.
However, if we've been at it for a long time and our baby is not moving and we've tried these other strategies that we've been
Mhm.
given, we may need to put a little bit more effort and bearing down, and that
Mhm.
sometimes can mean briefly holding your breath.
Yeah, and I mean, we're also talking about flexibility
Yeah.
here, right? Like, I think that should go without saying, but breath holding at any point in time, it's really a tool. It's not the rule.
Yes.
So it's another option that is available to you.
Do you want your labor support plan to be just breathe through it, or actual tools that help?
The Comfort Measures for Labor class from How to Mom teaches real hands-on ways to cope with contractions, movement, breathing, positions, and partner support that doesn't involve panic Googling mid labor.
This class works whether you're planning an epidural, no epidural, or let's see how it goes type of birth.
Online, practical, calming, and confidence boosting.
And hey, if you're a How To Mom client, don't forget to enter your discount code at checkout. Find more information at howtomom.com under courses. Now, back to the episode.
And it, like we just said, like that breath holding can be a useful tool
Yes.
in those early stages of pushing.
Yep.
So it's not the golden rule of pushing.
Yeah, and like a lot of people are concerned about trauma to their pelvic floor or not wanting to tear. We also hear similar fears and concerns about not wanting a belly birth or a cesarean.
Mhm.
Well, in order to have a vaginal birth, we do need to push our baby out. And so sometimes we just have to be flexible of like what's working and what's not
Right.
working and know that we can adjust.
Mhm.
So going back, like once baby has descended and has started to crown, that's often where we see that real benefit of, the gentle, slower, shorter, more controlled pushes
Yeah.
to allow that perineum to get more flexible and to stretch, which can obviously decrease the risks of tearing significantly. And so I think just that context there is helpful in terms of when we would want kind of to not be holding our breath during pushing, and it's not necessarily the entire pushing phase.
I think that's also plays very much into this idea where, we do see some challenges and some problems start to bubble up with people when they're feeling locked in, where they're feeling like this is the advice that I was given prenatally, this is what I was told and practicing versus, again, going back to that flexibility, like it's an option. So sometimes a birthing person might believe, I can't hold my breath.
Right.
I can't hold my breath under any circumstances because it could lead to all these different things, right? Like I'm preparing my body, I'm protecting my body. That's what I was told. So that really can those limiting thoughts, I think can make and some hesitation too. Like your body and your brain sort of have to kind of connect when you're in that pushing phase. And I do think that can sort of just tighten and sort of restrict
in certain ways, just being married to one direction, one piece of advice. And that goes for all stages of pregnancy. But today's episode obviously is just focused on the pushing phase. And I think to kind of end that part of this conversation, and I think this can be a good rule for all stages, is birth requires responsiveness, not perfection, right? So we can have desires, we can have plans, but we also can be flexible to change. And we often call it, we're going to pivot.
Right.
But it might just be that place, that area, that piece of advice. We just may need to pivot a little bit.
Yep. No, I completely agree with you. Good point.
I think why we felt like it was important to have this conversation is to just kind of really lay out like who's attending birth, who is seeing birth firsthand in the moment, that real pushing phase in action and not just scenarios and ideas around those options. And so it's not about criticizing, it's more just about who is in that field, what scope we all have as professionals, and just kind of setting the tone in terms of what advice, what recommendations, and what referrals should be made. And obviously that guidance, before and after birth, it is very important, but I think it's also really important to be talking to your doula about pushing, because we are the ones who are seeing it in action.
Yeah. I mean, I assume you're talking about the fact that pelvic floor therapists aren't attending births. They're not typically a part of the birth team in the room.
Yes.
Paying attention to who's on the ground with you is really important, and really working with them to figure out what's going to work for you in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that the best outcomes happen when professionals refer out instead of trying to cover every aspect of birth. Yep. And that's something that I have learned over, this last decade of being a doula, right? We can't be everything to everyone. Not only is that just doing a disservice, but we also have some really amazing professionals, especially here in the Twin Cities. And we really want you to feel like you have an entire team surrounding you and everybody kind of plays a role. And so, just like we refer clients to pelvic floor therapists for pregnancy prep or postpartum recovery, we find it really important when other professionals refer to us as doulas, since we are the ones, attending these births with these clients.
Yeah, I mean, the continuous labor support too is just really just is our scope. That is what
Yeah.
we do. That's what we're trained to do. Families don't need just one person doing everything, like you said. Like they need that full team and deserve it, really.
So I think some ways that we can adjust or make some small shifts that could be extremely helpful to those who are, planning their birth and looking forward to the pushing stage and what that looks like is if we could just see some more language around pushing that sounds more like, here are some different pushing styles.
Mm-hmm.
Here's when this might be helpful.
Right.
Here's when this type of pushing technique might be helpful. Or, here's who can support you in real time during labor. We can talk and prep and prepare, but we can't predict. And so having that continuous support, someone there with you that can help you pivot if needed,
Mm-hmm.
I think can be really, really helpful. And also just not having these hard and fast rules
Yeah.
and even though as professionals, it might not be a hard and fast rule that you're giving, but that patient or client might be taking it as that and really holding tight to it.
Just leaving some room for adaptation is just
Yeah.
really critical when we have these conversations, and even great for anyone out there listening. Like,
Yeah.
great opportunity for you to ask some questions about adaptivity. Like,
Yeah.
how can I adapt to this with the stage?
Yeah.
Like, go ahead, ask away.
Yeah. And even questions of like, why do I not want to hold my
Yeah.
breath? Why is that a recommendation? When would it be appropriate to hold my breath? Like, I love those conversations. So at the end of the day, our goal is always empowerment and to inform those who are prepping and preparing for birth ahead. We want people to trust their bodies, to always understand their options, and to know that it is okay to adjust in the moment.
Yeah. And that there is no perfect pushing technique. I mean, the only technique that works for that body
Yep.
and that time and that baby.
Yep.
Like that, and that.
So true.
Just
Yes.
in all parens, right?
Yes.
That's the technique.
So, in closing, we are incredibly grateful for pelvic floor therapists and all the work that they do. And we are equally committed to honoring the expertise that comes from attending births.
And when each professional stays in their lane and refers appropriately and respects everyone's lane, everybody wins, families win. It's just a huge important part of your birthing team.
And just like every episode we have on this podcast, we would love to hear your feedback. So please share. We would love to continue this conversation. I think it's an important one and it's always evolving. But we are just happy that you were able to listen to this episode today. And we hope that this conversation was helpful. And we will see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. For show notes, links, and more information, please visit our website at howtomom.com. That's HOW2MOM.com.
And remember, whether you're a mom, a parent, or a caregiver, you are doing great. It's progress over perfection, and we're all just figuring it out together.